This is part 2 of the Church Live Streaming Essential Guide. We'll talk about adding better web cameras, DLSRs, mirrorless, semi-pro, professional level cameras, lens systems, focal lengths, and why all that matters. If you've not seen the previous parts, I encourage you to start with part 1 and work your way through all the material up to this point. We cover a lot of ground and we highlight a lot of important information. Otherwise, here we go. So, let's talk about cameras. Your web camera in your laptop is horrible. It's just horrible. And I don't care how much you spent on that laptop. They put a 10-cent chip in there and they put a piece of glass or plastic in front of it and they called it a webcam. It's really not a webcam by most definitions. The contrast ratio, like if you had this, I've got this strong backlight here from the window, the sun's coming through it, and it's just blowing out that window, but notice I'm still okay. Well, part of that is because the camera that I'm using is a better quality camera. The optics are better, the sensor is a little better, the processing is a little better, and it's able to have more dynamic range to handle the extreme brightness of the scene without blowing that out. And so what I'd like to recommend is the lowest quality webcam that you're going to get is going to be better. No, I won't say that. Most low quality webcams that you're going to get are going to be better than the webcam that's in your laptop. So plan on getting one. They're really hard to get right now. Even the Logitech C920, which is what I'm using right now, what I recommend is a base entry level webcam. Don't go lower than this. They're normally, I got one for $50. They're normally $70. Right now they're going for $450 because everybody wants one and they're hard to get. So, and that's used, right? It's like, whoa. So anyway, get a Logitech C920. It's actually a great little camera. It's 8 years old. It still is respectably not that much worse than the $200 web cameras that are a year or 2 years old. So yes, you can certainly get better, but for $50 to $70, or if somebody in your church has one and they say, yeah, you can use this, it's great. And it's a great bang for the buck. So I'm going to give you some expensive options, so don't worry about expensive options, but I certainly don't want to leave you without some affordable options. And the Logitech C920 always comes in as the best bang for the buck web camera out there. Now, the thing about it is it's got like a 6 foot or 8 foot cord, 6 foot cord probably. Well, that's not going to get you very far, especially if you want to end up putting your web camera not right on top of your own monitor, but you want to, film and show other things. So what I recommend doing, and I've actually done this multiple times, is I have some 64 foot, 32 foot. I've gone 128 feet by chaining them together, active USB extender cables. They're about $29 on Amazon. Some work better than others, but these work. I've used them in live situations where I've streamed. I think I set up 3 webcams with these extension cables. Some of them are 128 feet long, as I mentioned. And they were at a large hall with 800 kids at a choir festival. And I had one out in the audience getting the whole view of the whole stage and platform, and then I had one on off to the side, and then one that I could move around and actually get close-ups of soloists. And I would just have a stagehand move it, because this was a low-budget festival for kids, but I would just have a stagehand move that, and I had someone volunteer to do the switching, and we ran a live stream broadcast of a choir festival that parents from all over Oregon tuned in behind a paywall and paid $10 to watch their kid, maybe it was $7, to watch their kid sing on the stage at the Holt Center in Oregon. Really fun. It was really cool. So you can run multiple webcams, but I just wanted to show you here how easy it is to upgrade your stream, and that is get a better camera. Start with the C920. If you want to go more than that, great, but you can't go wrong there for getting something better. The key to making any web camera work, and it doesn't matter if it's one of these lower end ones or one of the higher end ones, as you're watching my lighting and stuff changing around here, the key to making any webcam look better, even if it's a $1,000 or $2,000 mirrorless or DLSR camera that you're using for your webcam, which we'll talk about also, is not the expense of the camera, although that certainly does add some other benefits. The key is lighting. So if you light your scene well, this camera can perform quite well, and it will. So that's something to know. If you want to add multiple cameras like we talked about, there you go. One thing I wanted to give you, it's a gotcha or a little tip, is that it's much better to plug each camera into a separate USB root hub. Those are separate ports that are connected to your motherboard separately or normally you'll have a hub that might have 2 or 3 ports on it or 2 ports on it. Plug in one camera to there, find another cable coming off your motherboard that goes to another set of ports at the back, plug into one of those. Don't plug them all into the same root hub. Don't get a USB hub that has 8 ports and plug 4 cameras into it. It's not going to probably work. They'll fight for attention, and the computer won't know which one it should be listening to when, and it just doesn't seem to play very well. So plug into separate root hubs when you're adding separate cameras. That'll save you a lot of headache and pain. Now, the next thing is you can go with a thing like an NDI. NDI is this technology. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. I should have had it ready, but I didn't. NDI. It's under video tools. Here we go. NewTek NDI. You go get the NewTek NDI app, and I just did now. Turn it on. I load it, and then I'm going to go up here to I push record on the camera. And so this is what it looks like on the back of the camera, right? I push that little red button so it's recording. And then I'm going to switch to my Wildcam here. We'll see if it works. I changed my internet connectivity, and I was putting off when it was going to actually do its switchover with Comcast, and they didn't care, and they turned off my router before I could install their newer router, and took down all my Wi-Fi. And that's actually why this isn't working. I come to think of it, because my Wi-Fi is down. This comes over Wi-Fi. Basically, it becomes a very good web camera with a slight delay. So the only downside of this is it's through Wi-Fi, so there's going to be a little bit of a delay. But the image quality that comes through, this is an iPhone 6s Plus or something like that. Any newer phone, and you can use an Android phone also, is going to have a much better camera in it than the Logitech C920 has in it. And it's going to do better video for you also, but there will be a slight delay. So I would use it on things that don't matter. Like I wouldn't use it as a moving, like a gimbaled you can get little gimbals for these, right? I wouldn't use it for a moving gimbaled stabilized shot to push in on your drummer during a worship band thing, doing some fancy licks, because it's not going to be in sync. Maybe you wouldn't even notice it so much on the drumming, because sticks tend to blur at low frame rates anyway. But if you're lip syncing, the vocalist isn't going to sync up to the video by the time it gets in with the rest of the stream of the audio, which comes right in. So I wouldn't use it for that. But if you're just having one person that's maybe remotely interviewing somebody, I was thinking normally you could use it to interview people before a service if you're streaming a live service and there's actually people there. You guys probably don't do services where actual humans show up anymore, but you could certainly use it where you're bringing in another video source from the other room, as long as you're on the Wi-Fi network, real time, just slight delayed audio. But if it's just their audio coming through that phone, you won't know that it's slightly delayed. It won't look delayed. It's only when you blend it in with the audio that's coming in from a mixer or something like that. So you can add, a couple web cameras, and you can add an NDI sourced iPhone or Android, and have 3 camera views for your stream. And I show this super speed thing here. You don't care about this. Probably most laptops are going to have a USB 3 port, and you're going to maybe get a USB 3 hub. That was an older port, and this is an older graphic that I had. So let's go on. And I think here I talk about real cameras a little bit. So the Logitech, like I said, is older. The Brio is newer. It's about $150, $200 or $400 right now because of the COVID-19 run on all things streaming. The Brio is not that great. It is slightly and noticeably better than the C920, but it's 4 times the price. And It'll do 4K, and the 920 is a 1080p webcam. The thing to keep in mind when you're buying any webcam is that you want in-camera sensor encoding, data encoding, so that there's a chip in the camera that takes that video and encodes it into a data stream that's compressed, so that you're not running tons of data down that USB pipe that then your computer has to deal with. So you want the camera to have in-camera encoding. But honestly, if you stay with the C920 or the newer revs of that, you're going to love it. If you want the Brio, fine, but it's probably not going to be that much of a difference. You notice here the image quality that I'm giving you right now, it's not that bad. This is an 8-year-old camera, and it's $50, and it just looks way better than what a lot of platform, people are putting out from their laptop. Real cameras, bigger, better sensors. Bigger is better on sensors, and laptops have generally pretty lousy, tiny sensors, and better lenses are hugely important. So better lenses help a lot, and these bigger cameras have better lenses. Better signal. So if you're using a real camera, you're going to get a pure HDMI signal is going to come out. You want a clean HDMI out. It's going to come out of that camera. I don't have my DLSR here. Or my mirrorless here. I should probably grab that. And out the side, you're going to take a HDMI cable out, and you're going to bring it into a capture device. We'll talk about those in a moment. You can actually see it there below the HDMI cable, below the camera. We have the Elgato and the Magwell HDMI to USB capture cards. There's like the Elgato 60 HD60 Pro or HD60S. There's the internal, external versions of those. The Camlink 4K is probably the best bang for the buck because it does full 4K capture. You're not going to need 4K capture, but a day will come when you might decide to start streaming in 4K, and it'd be nice to be able to get it. But right now, you only need the 1080p, generally speaking, because you don't want to bring in 2 or 3 or 4 DLSRs or mirrorless cameras at 4K, ingest those into your computer, and just swamp it with data crunching of combining all of that data. Because 4K, remember, is going to be 4 times the bandwidth needs of a 1080p stream. And so it's just a lot of computers aren't going to be able to handle that. And you may not have the bandwidth to pump out a 4K stream anyway. And nobody in your church is likely going to watch it in 4K either. So it's just not necessarily worth it. Anyway, there's some different options there. I think I can zoom in here and you can see. No, it crunched it up. Sorry about that. I can post a list of those, but all of them are great. The Camlink 4K is probably the best for the money. It's $130 and does 4K 30, I think, and 1080p 60, and the quality looks great, and there's hardly any delay, hardly any lag. Anytime you're introducing lag, it's more things to have to worry about and sync with. So you're going to get clean HDMI out with a good camera for that, and you'll have some wireless options too. You can actually add HDMI to HDMI wireless transmitters, so you can send your camera 200 feet away, or you can use a 100-foot HDMI cable. I've got big, long HDMI cables that I use on some things. So what cameras to use? Well, the Sony A5100 is pretty well respected. It's from 2014. It's a standard Sony E-mount. That's an APS-C, which is a small crop sensor size sensor. It'll do 1080p 60. It'll do 1080p 30. It comes with a little zoom kit lens. It's $550 used, I think, or new. Now that everything's more expensive, new or used, or it's hard to win. The Sony A6400 is about $800 used. That's a nice camera, better camera. I'm not a big Sony fan, but for streaming, Sony comes in really well because it has clean HDMI output. And by clean output, that just means that when you get the HDMI coming out the side of the camera and you bring it into your computer, it doesn't have all of your ISO and shutter speed and aperture settings and auto intelligent IO color balance and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have all the stuff written on your screen and on your settings. So in that case, you can stream that because you don't need all that junk otherwise, right? Then other cameras are the Panasonic Lumix G7 is popular for streaming, about $400, $500 with a lens. The Canon EOS M200's nice. It's crop sensor again. It's bigger than APS-C, I believe. It'll do 4K, 24, 1080p, 60. I actually kind of like the Nikon Z50. It's about $1,000 new. They're on sale right now, and I think you can get them with a adapter for $50 to use any of the Nikon older legacy glass. It's basically a smaller crop sensor version of the Nikon Z6, which is a fantastic camera. I have a Z7. It's an amazing camera. And the Z6 is an amazing camera. And if you could stream with a Z6 or a Z7, which I could if I could get a Elgato Camlink 4K, which I can't for $400. I'm not going to do that. Then you would have an amazing image because the optical lens system on the Z system is amazing. The sensor's amazing, and you'll get beautiful, beautiful images. I saw somebody on Facebook in the Worship Leaders Plus group. They were asking about cameras and wanted to know, and some people what people recommended. And some people had recommended the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which is a great camera, but it doesn't have autofocus, and there's no autofocus system you can add to it. So if you've got a cameraman who is good at pulling focus, that's great. You don't care. But most of us are on a reduced crew. It's me, or it's me and my spouse, or me and my dog. And my spouse and my dog don't want to pull focus. The dog might want to more, but they're going to do it with their teeth. So autofocus suddenly becomes a real issue, and it's important. And if you've got face detection or eye autofocus detection, all the better. So I wouldn't recommend going with that Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera just because it doesn't have autofocus. Other than that, it's a great camera. But if you're going to live stream and you're on a limited crew, I'd rather have 3 cameras that autofocus set up in different positions and one person moving around between cameras and maybe zooming in and changing the angle or something like that while I'm switched to a different scene. Then have cameras that if the subject moves at all, they're out of focus. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. And I say that because I've filmed and videoed a lot of live events and a lot of music videos and stuff like that. And I pull focus manually when it's to my advantage to do so, and when it's to my advantage to autofocus, I let the camera do that work. And you shouldn't, have to work harder than you need to, and a lot of times you don't want to do it. So keep that in mind when you're looking at cameras. Any of these on this list would be great options, and they go up in price, but there you go. Consider focal length. Fisheye lenses are super wide, and they kind of like, you can stand in a corner. Actually, you can stand at the end of a room and almost see the walls almost up to your left and right, immediately, like they're right there. It's that wide of a field of view. You don't really want that for broadcasting because it does give you really curved barreled lines. And an ultra wide is pretty popular for It's popular for streamers because you get a lot in. This is like a 92 degree angle of view coming out of this camera, which is like if you stuck this camera in the corner, you might see the walls on both sides just framing the border of the edge if it was right in the very corner, and you'd see the entire room from there. Well, that's great if I'm up close and personal and I want to show something behind the person, and so that's popular, but it's not as natural and great of a look, and especially as you work over to the sides of a frame. Notice how the side of my head is starting to smear over there. And it's going to add distortion. So if you're shooting a group of people where you've got some in the middle and some kind of spread out and they're standing further back, the people who are further back, notice the width of my hand here versus the width of my hand here. It's going to get, it's going to get wider as I go to that frame. The people who are on the wider sides of that scene are going to look heavier. They're going to weigh more. It looks like they're going to gain weight. Then they'll be mad at you. You don't want people to get mad at you. So kind of the determining factor isn't the angle of the lens of field of view. The determining factor really should be how many people do I need in my shot and how much room do I have to put that camera away from them in order to get them in the shot. Ideally, and on a big television studio stage, they have a lot of room where they can pull that camera back and they can use a narrower focal length, more almost telephoto or sometimes telephoto, which is going to be more flattering to the talent's face. Now, I don't know if you have talent. On my streams, I don't have talent. On my gaming streams, I don't have any talent, so I'm not used to working with talent, but they like to be considered talent, and they like to be made to look better. So the wider the angle of the lens, the more weird, distorted, and alien their face is going to look, and the more normal to portrait and telephoto range you go, the more natural and pleasant their face is going to look. So if you have room and you can use a 50 millimeter lens, a normal lens, on a DLSR or a mirrorless camera, and pull your camera back a little bit to get 2 or 3 people in the frame, it's going to look much more broadcast quality, much more professional than a webcam, per se. Okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, and telephoto, extreme telephoto, stuff like that. That's the end of this section. But coming up is the importance of lighting and how to improve your lighting inexpensively or even for free. Lighting's the single most important thing you can do for your stream, so don't miss this section. And if you haven't already, be sure to click that subscribe button and the notify bell. Hey, and share this with somebody who might benefit from it. See you soon.